Juliane Brauer. Am I saying your name correctly?
No,
Breuer,
it's
Breuer,
Breuer. It's
Breuer.
difficult.
It's difficult if you're not used to all the little umlauts and stuff. Julianne, you've done an incredible study. I think it's been covered in a lot of different publications. The study you did on the way people in various communities are similar in the way they interact with their dogs. But you
Mhm.
studied communities far away from Western society. First of all, I would like to talk about this idea, which it couldn't be in German, it would be wrong in German, weird. I've never heard the idea that dogs in Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies are called weird, which it is weird. It's our normal, and it's weird. It's not how most of the world lives. Is that commonly known amongst academics?
Actually, it comes from general psychology because we have the problem in general psychology that all the data we have, or the most of the data we have, come from people from these weird countries, from these Western and so on countries. And there was a guy, Joseph Henrich, I think, who first brought it up in 2010 or so. And there's even
Okay.
a book, The Weirdest People in the World. And I think it's a
Oh,
very general problem. And I see that in many fields of psychology that you just test these people. And actually, we do not test the average person, but usually
right.
you test psychologist students. And
Yes.
they are also not the average German people, for instance, or Western people. And
Right.
that's why your results are, you have to be cautious and it's not universal. And for many topics, we now see that it is not universal. And so I thought about it, and actually there was a retreat, and I was at that time at a department that worked on cultural differences as well, so on cultural evolution. And there we discussed this, and then we came up with the idea for the project because I thought also that we do not test the average dog, not even in Germany, because we
Mhm.
test the dog from someone who is ready to bring the dog here, who's
Yes.
really interested in our results and so on. So it's not the average dog somewhere in the backyard. And of course we didn't know anything about non-weird dogs, dogs from non-Western societies. And this is how we came up with the idea. Yes.
But the thing that's beautiful is that the sort of the headline is striking global similarities in interactions between dogs and humans. I think that first of all, I've never known that the places that grew up or I've lived are weird. I I'm someone who has retreated from rich, industrialized, status seeking, whatever Western society is grasps for. But I'm still weird at the bottom. I'm still wealthy compared to all the people in the
Mhm.
world and more educated and more lucky and more privileged, or maybe not. Maybe it's a deficit. And the places that you studied are so interesting because I think it's very easy for those of us who, let's say, are overinvested in our dogs. That's a judgment, but I would say I'm overinvested. I was almost late for our interview because I had to keep the younger dog company while he ate because many days he doesn't want to eat. He'll never eat alone. So you have to stand there and tell him what a fabulous dog he is. And then I tell him, you do understand that dogs in Mexico are eating out of a garbage pile and in India and God knows where else. And I have to keep you company while you eat this precious, humanely raised, slaughtered, fabulous food. So I think it's okay to say over invested in our dogs. But
Yes.
we
Yes.
like to think, oh, those people who are shepherds, those people who are hunter gatherer type people in far flung, less developed places. To them, a dog is an object, a dog is a possession, a dog's feelings and needs don't matter. And it's so not true from the work you did.
Yes.
When you went into it, did you have this sort of presumption as well? You're a scientist, you're a thinker, so you probably tried to have tabula rasa and be objective.
Yes, of course, but I was a bit scared, I have to say, because people also tell you many stories, and there are many stories about dogs that are not treated nicely,
Yes,
and then people
yes.
from the north come and rescue these dogs. And but what I found was really basically the opposite. No, it's not that these dogs, they are not always very healthy, for instance. So they have fleas, they have worms, and sometimes they have injuries. And also, in most cases, they do not get medical care, but that's a question
Right.
of money, of course. But if you ask the owners how they feel about their dogs, it's very similar. So I was really impressed by the questionnaires, because we did questionnaires, but also tests. But especially in the questionnaires, regarding the relationship, I thought it's very similar. And yes, I did not expect it to be so similar. And it was nice to see, actually.
Yes, it must have been really heartening. It's interesting to me that as a scientist doing a study where you're going in with a question and you hope not to know the answer, otherwise you'd be wasting your time, right? You're trying to uncover something mysterious or that no one has asked before. That must have been exciting. And when you say you were frightened, yeah, we don't want to go in with these presumptions. You hear about dogs being, call it neglected, which we now come in weird society, which I now am so thrilled I know this new word. We think that's abuse. It's not abuse. Neglect is not abuse, and it isn't even neglect with a capital N in those societies. The people don't have 3 meals a day. The people don't necessarily have medical care or access to fresh water and, I don't know, bathing facilities. The whole world
Yeah.
is different.
Yes, and also often it's seen in that way. Yes, poor dogs don't get meals 2 times a day and all this. But but I was very much impressed when I presented my data on a little conference, and there was a guy, a vet, who was doing research on breeds and on these breeds with a short nose that can hardly breathe,
Yes.
and then you need a cesarean for these. And this
Yes.
guy, he said to me, "Oh my God," he saw my photos and videos and said, "These dogs look so healthy, because such dogs with the short noses wouldn't survive there. And of course, they do not have a cesarean. So they are healthy. And I think in many ways, they are also happy. They might have
Oh,
some
yes.
injuries and they might have some warmth, but they are not under control all day. They do not have a leash.
Right.
Most of them have never seen a leash or a collar. They're
Yes.
just free. And
Yes.
I had one experience where I thought this was really mind changing for me. This was in Vanuatu, so that's not far from Australia, and there are many Australian tourists. And I tested one dog, and I think he even had a scarf somewhere, so he was injured, but not strongly. He was healed again, but you would see it.
Right.
And so I tested him with his owner, and I don't know, 3 days later, I met this dog at the beach, and I thought, and now imagine an Australian tourist and seeing this
Yes.
poor dog without a
Yes.
collar, and then rescuing him
Yes.
and
Yes.
bring him to Brisbane, and then put him on a leash 3 times a day for half an hour. And this dog is really used to live there autonomously. How do you call that? So just,
Autonomously. Yes. By
yes,
himself,
and
having freedom and agency. Goes where he
yes.
wants, sleeps where he
Yes,
wants.
and they go hunting in Vanuatu. They go hunting once a week. There's a signal for dogs, and they hunt. And then they are always in groups. They are never alone. They are with a family, and so it's, yeah. There are these differences, but it's not like this, that Western dogs in all cases lead a better life. I
I
would
I
really
think there's a
disagree
lot of
now.
us, ornithologists like Mark Beckhoff and others, who have talked about the superior lifestyle of free roaming dogs. It's not logical in Sydney, Australia, or New York City, or Munich, or Berlin. You live in a smaller town between those two places, but you can't have free roaming dogs. Back in the day, we did. And of course, there
Yes.
were problems. There was a lot of feces, and there were dogs who might have had diseases that were communicable, and they might have been biters. And that's why all of this control of dogs came about, urban centers where there was too many people or vehicles and also the dogs. But the work that Sindor Pangal's been doing in India, which I'm sure you're familiar with, what she calls her
Hmm.
streeties, these are
Hmm.
dogs who look emaciated and they're blissfully happy. She's been studying them for decades. She's done a book about them. They're, you know, that work, right? They live on a dirt pile, but they're together and they're chill.
Yes, and there's also work now from, I think, the University of Vienna. They have a huge project in northern Morocco, and they also say their main findings are that these street dogs are happy.
Yeah.
lead a perfect life. And they're also well fed because the rubbish that the tourists bring or that
Yeah.
they get from restaurants, they know when this restaurant puts the garbage
Yes.
out and so on. So you have this different situation and they live a different life, but it's not that they are not happy.
It's a
I
good
probably
life.
not.
A good life for them, but you're right. We weirds,
Mm.
now we're going to
Mhm.
call ourselves that. We come into these places as tourists. Now, you go into Puerto Rico and Dead Dog Beach, that's a terrible thing. Those are discarded dogs who are in all kinds of problems. And those dogs
There
get
are
rescued.
differences, but I also would assume from my work now that there are less street dogs than one would think because you cannot identify this. And there's even a study about dogs in South America where they looked at tourists that meet dogs and then the tourists feed the dogs and the dogs walk with them for
Right.
quite a long time and the tourists think, oh, these poor dogs, but they belong to someone. And
Yeah.
also it's a problem because the tourists are walking through national parks and the dogs follow them because they have some food and they feed them because they think they are poor stray dogs, but they belong to someone
Yeah.
and it creates new problems. So I think we have to be very careful. I understand that if you see a suffering dog, a clearly suffering dog that you want to help, but it's
Right.
sometimes different than what you would think.
And it's
Yeah.
lowercase s suffering, not suffering from an
Yes.
open wound, not yelping
Yes.
and crying and unable to walk. They
Yes.
just
Yes.
are less fat than our overfed fat
Yes.
dogs who now, I don't know about Germany, but in the US, there's now an epidemic of a disease called obesity. It's now called a disease. So we aren't doing them any favors. Some of the
Yeah.
countries you went to are fascinating, and I wonder how you picked them. But before we talk about those, when you say you tested that dog and owner, can you explain how you clinically, if you will, scientifically, academically, just made a test to determine the relationship between the dog and the person?
Okay, so we did two things. One is that we had the questionnaire with basic questions about how you keep the dog, but also your relationship, as I said before. And then we had 6 tests where we knew how Western dogs would react. One was about obedience, simply does the dog come when the owner calls? And then we asked the owner whether they could make their dogs stay, somehow sit, or that they lay down, which they didn't. That was very impressive. So I think I tested 100 something dogs, 120, 30 in the non-Western countries. And there was one dog who did sit to obey
One,
the sit command. One.
one.
So it's obviously not important. It's very important to us,
Yes.
especially in Germany. So every dog knows
Sits,
sit.
sits.
Yes, it's and but they don't. But the dogs came. They came in Germany and were more obedient in general. But also in the other countries, they basically came when you called them. The second one was about following the pointing gesture, where we know that dogs usually follow the pointing to locate hidden food. The third one was my favorite. This was again about food hidden, but there were 4 hiding places unreachable for the dog. And I showed the dog where I hide the food, but the owner didn't know where. And then the owner had to find
Ah,
out with the help of the dog where the food was. Then we had a talk about perspective taking, so whether the dogs can distinguish whether a human has the eyes open or closed. Then we
really?
had, yes,
Wow.
that is actually the test that didn't work very well. The original test, that was actually the first study that I published together with my colleagues long time ago. And this is just basically you put some food on the floor and then you say, don't take it.
Right.
So when you say no or aus, and then you either look at the dog or you have the eyes closed. And in a clean laboratory setting, of course, you do it with an experimenter. And then we could show that the dogs can distinguish between eyes open and eyes closed.
Oh,
So they would listen to you when your eyes are open and they would not listen to you when the eyes are closed. We
wow.
did this also in all these countries and also in Germany again with the owner, but then it's more complicated because there are people around who have the eyes
Yes.
open.
Yes.
So it didn't work out very well, this
Right.
one. But then we had 2 more. One was about an unsolvable problem. I like that a lot as well. So it's basically you have a Tupperware box and you just put the lid on it, and then you let the dog eat the food several times, and then suddenly you close the box so the food is unavailable. So the dog cannot reach it anymore. So the problem gets unsolvable. And then we look for three things. So one is how persistent are these dogs? And then the second one is whether they ask for help by looking either at
Right.
the owner or at me, at the experimenter. So these were the three measures we took here.
And
And
this shows you their relationship with their owner.
yes, and also the persistence, of course. And there was a difference between German dogs and non-Western dogs, so that the German dogs would look more often at their owner, and they were much more persistent, the German hunting dogs. And the other dogs, they looked at me more,
Interesting.
because probably I had the food
That's
all the
right.
time, because
Yeah.
it's usually one of the last tests, so they know me already and they know that I have the yummy food, so they look
Yeah.
more at me. But
Right.
still, they are all looking at people. And we also think that in Western societies, it's more like one dog relationship to one human, whereas there it's more like you have a group of dogs that lives together with a human family. So
Yes.
the attachment is not towards one person. So they are
Yes.
fine with me. They were fine with me after some tests. And
One
the last
family
test,
and one village also, or town, or whatever it is. In
yeah,
other
I
words,
think it's really a family, because sometimes you have all these dogs walking around, and then I often said, okay, this one is not testable, it's too shy or something, or it looks sick or whatever. And then I said, can we test that one? Because I always, within one family, I had one person to test and one dog. And then I said, why don't we test this one? And he said, no, that's just the neighbor's dog. So they in
oh,
all these cultures, there was a clear distinction how many dogs are owned by a family, and it's not that it's just the
right.
village belong to the village.
Got it.
So this, yeah.
They do have
And
a sense of. There was a last one you were going to say.
yeah. And the sixth test was about a strange object. So we had a very strange dog toy that would give a noise and move itself. And then we looked how the dogs would react. And actually, they were less scared, especially in Vanuatu. I thought they would freak out, but they were not so scared. But what we wanted to know is, first, the owner is not there. And then the owner approaches this thing and shows the dog that this thing is not dangerous. And we wanted to know whether the dog react to that, so whether they would approach together
Right.
with the owner, and also whether they check back. So we call that social referencing, so that they get information from the owner about this strange object, and they all do in the same way.
No kidding. It's really quite something because these are fairly sophisticated tests. I mean, in a
Yeah.
sense, they're not. Are you noticing the people patting their dog or talking
No, no,
to
no,
it?
no. It's real experiments. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Really
it took
interesting.
quite a lot of effort.
Oof, it
Yes.
sounds exhausting, and your
Yes.
travels took you so many places. So I'm going to say the places, and then you tell me which one you either were the most fascinated by or the most frustrated by. So there's Vanuatu. Is that the one that was in Australia? Vanuatu?
Yes, Vanuatu these are islands in the Pacific behind from our side. It's behind Australia.
Wow. So that was a trip. Holy cow. You
Yeah,
certainly didn't make
that's
it easier on yourself.
yeah, that's really you cannot go further
No, you
than
can't. I
from
was
my
going to
side,
say,
because
you went
then
as far as you could. And then
yes.
Mongolia,
Hmm.
Madagascar, and Peru. The
Hmm.
picture you took of this little, I don't know if he's a shepherd boy with a Mongolian shepherd dog. The little boy is only, I don't know, half a foot taller, his head, than the dog's head.
Hmm.
It's the dearest photo ever to the weird Western eye because of the costume or outfit or getup the little boy has on. He looks like a little man. So,
Yes.
what was that situation? Was he a shepherd?
No, they are all kind of shepherds. I think in Mongolia, you could say they are hunters and shepherds, because they all keep cattle, and cattle is very important in this culture. And the Mongolian, especially the Mongolians, were really proud that we were testing them and their dogs. In that case,
Nice.
it was also a special breed called tiger dogs. And this particular dog was really huge. And the boy was 5 years old and he was very proud. And so not only
Oh,
the owners put that traditional dress, but also they put it on their son. And the funny thing was later on, when we went away, they put the boy on a horse. The horse wasn't big, but still for the boy it was really big. And then they said, "You're going to town, please take him with you." So the boy was galloping close to us. I have
no,
a very
no.
funny video of him, and he was really relaxed on the little horse. And
Wow. The
so,
Mongolian horses are famous for being
yes,
horses
yes,
that are
yeah,
like
it's the horse
Arabians, as far
culture.
as I understand. They can go long distances. They're really
Yeah,
hardy. They're adapted to the environment, which is a
yeah,
little bit harsh.
yes, yes.
That was quite amazing. And then Madagascar, that was
Yes.
quite exotic of you. How did you pick it?
It's all, we try to capture all continents. We try to
I
capture
see.
different landscapes, different cultures, and then of course there's also like you need connections there. So I had a
Of
colleague,
course.
an archaeologist who works there, and then so I could get this connection. Yeah, but yeah, try to get very distinct kind of cultures. Yeah.
That's why they're so far flung and exotic sounding. So those colleagues you had on the ground, they helped
Mhm.
with the translation because otherwise, how would you be able to talk to the Mongolian shepherd people?
Yes, I had wonderful helpers everywhere. So they translated the questionnaires for the owners. And of course, they were always with me and translated the tests, what the owners were supposed to do. And I have to say, I'm so grateful because not only the owners were so nice, but also the helpers were so nice. And
Nice.
I think it's very strange if you're living in a village in the Amazon, for instance, in Peru or in Vanuatu or wherever, and then someone is coming, a white woman is
Yes.
coming and asking you a bit strange questions about your dog and ask you to do this and that with your dog. But they were all very patient, very nice. They, especially in Mongolia, we had to drink a lot of tea with them, and it
Wow.
was really nice and very peaceful. And I actually, in all these trips, I never had a negative experience with anyone. So people
Nice.
were nice. Yeah.
Nice. It sounds like a dream for somebody whose life has been devoted to studying dogs and other animals and thinking about them. It's like you floated a boat out into the world and the
Yeah,
dogs came. I think what you did was brave and inventive and original and creative. And what you've come back to tell us is we aren't the only ones, people. There's dogs being loved and cared for and cared about all over the world.
yes,
And especially Americans and British and I guess Germans, when you visit somewhere, don't make any presumptions. The
yes,
street dogs in Athens have always been the street dogs in Athens. They're part of the landscape. There's people who care about them and look after them, and it's none of your damn business. You just go home to Fifi and get her a different rain jacket. But I think what Julianne has taught us is that the world is a small place for people and dogs, that all of us have a connection. It's a kind of a fabric of life amongst all of us. I think the work you've done is amazing. I know you're working on a book about it. I really hope somebody out there will be as kind as the Mongolian translators and somebody will translate your book from German so the rest of us can enjoy it. You have a lot to add to what we know and care about dogs, and I really appreciate what you're doing and are continuing to do. Keep on coming up with really cool ideas.
thank you very much. And I really enjoyed the project. It was the best project of my life so far, I can say
How
that.
wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you for being here and talking about it. Bye bye, Julianne.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.